اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. فاتحة. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا الأنبياء والمرسلين، سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. أما بعد، فقد قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ذكر علي عباد الصلوات. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Assalamu alaikum, Ya Ali Madad. Tonight, we will discuss about a very important subject. This subject is connected to our 12th Imam, the Imam of our time, Imam Mehdi alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Because tonight we will discuss about the 4 deputies of Imam Zamana, which are also referred as Nawab Arba, the 4 representatives of Imam Zamana alayhi salam. But before I begin talking about the 4 deputies, I think it's important that we first talk and understand the minor and major occultation, the differences and the important dates, such as when it began and when it ended and when it will end. Because if we do not talk about the minor occultation, it is impossible to understand the 4 deputies and their roles. Not only that, I find it important that before I begin this lecture, I give an introduction of the Imam of our time, Imam Zamana alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Imam al-Mahdi was born on the 15th of Sha'ban, 255 after Hijrah. He is our 12th Imam in the 12th Shia. He is also the son of Imam al-Askari, who is our 11th Imam. Imam Mahdi is the promised savior who will rise one day and fill the earth with peace and justice. Imam has been in the major occultation from the early years of his life. He's the Imam of our and the present age, the Imam of our time. His well-known titles are Imam al-Mahdi, of course, and Wali al-Asr. Wali al-Asr in English means the guardian of the age. When our Imam was only 5 years old, his father, the 11th Imam, Imam Askari, murdered in the year 260 after Hijrah. From 260 after Hijrah till 329 after Hijrah, it will be a period of the minor occultation. This will be a period with his followers, but not directly, indirectly with his 4 deputies. His mother, let's talk about the mother of Imam Zamana. His mother is referred in different ways. Some know her as Bibi Narjis, Sosan, Bibi Haditha, Malika, and Rihana. According to a hadith by Sheikh al-Sadduq, in his book, Imam Mahdi's mother is a Roman princess. Historians who have talked and who talk about the issues, they have all agreed that Imam was born in the house of his father in the basement of Imam al-Askari's house in Samara. The house is now part of the shrine of our 10th and 11th Imam. During the time of our 10th and 11th Imam, during the time of the Abbasid Caliphate, years before the birth of Imam Mahdi, they both lived there before they're murdered. During the time of the Abbasid Caliphate, our 10th and 11th Imam lived in that house in Samara. And that is why Imam al-Mahdi was born in that basement. But now, let's discuss about the 2 occultations of our Imam. As you know, and as I said, when our Imam was 5 years old, his father, the 11th Imam, murdered on 260 after Hijrah. Now from 260 after Hijrah till 329 after Hijrah, it will be a period of minor occultation. This period is a total of 69 years. Well, and during this 69 years, Imam will not be in contact with the Shi'as indirectly. He will be in contact with them indirectly with his 4 deputies that will be in contact with the Shia people. I understand that some of us know the minor occultation as غيبة الصغرى, and just to tell you, the minor occultation, some of us know it as غيبة الصغرى, and the major occultation, it is also called غيبة الكبرى. So just before we begin, let me introduce you that when I say minor occultation, I'm talking about غيبة الصغرى, and when I say major occultation, I am talking about غيبة الكبرى. Now before we begin, please recite aloud salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. As I mentioned before, the minor occultation started 260 after Hijrah all the way till 329 after Hijrah, totaling a 69-year occultation. When the last deputy of Imam Zamana passed away, right after this deputy's martyrdom, the major occultation began, and the major occultation is still going till this day, and the major occultation will end when Imam Mehdi will rise again and will have an operation to fill the entire world with peace and justice. During the minor occultation, Imam Zamana had indirect interactions with the Shia. How, you may wonder? Using his 4 deputies and settled their issues such as belief, inquiries, fiqh, ahkam, financial matters like collecting the khums and distribution. As I said before, the period of the minor occultation begins at 260 till 329, which is 69 years. And during these 69 years, we will see 4 deputies who will bring the questions of the Shia to our Imam. Our first deputy, the first deputy of Imam Zamana, the name is Osman bin Syed. He was the first deputy of our Imam. He was the student of our 10th Imam when he was only 11 years old, and then he became a great companion of our 11th Imam, Imam Askari alayhi salam. Osman bin Syed was a special deputy of Imam since the beginning. Since the beginning, when the minor occultation began, it was Osman bin Syed who was the deputy of our Imam. He became the deputy in 260 after Hijrah until the end of his life, until he murdered. Osman bin Syed was actually living in Zamana, but then he moved all the way to Baghdad and spent his deputation over there. In Baghdad and in some other cities of Iraq, he had few people who received khums from people, and they would send it to Osman bin Syed. Now, we don't know exactly when Osman bin Syed was born, his birth dates. We do not know that, but what we do know is that when he was 11 years old, he used to work at the house of our 10th Imam, and then he also became a student of our 10th Imam, and after that, he became a companion of Imam Askari alayhi salam. During the time of Osman bin Syed, Zamana was the center, was the base for the Abbasid army. The Abbasid had a massive enemy with the Shia of Imam. From the very beginning, the Abbasid had a massive hate and enemy towards the Shias. That is why Osman bin Syed had to move to Baghdad and fulfill his duties over there. Upon the demise of Osman bin Syed, Imam al-Mahdi wrote a condolence letter to his son Muhammad bin Osman. After the demise of Osman bin Syed, Imam wrote a letter of condolence to Muhammad bin Osman, who was the son of Osman bin Syed. In this letter, Imam expressed his condolences, and then Imam Zamana also expressed and said, Muhammad bin Osman, I am satisfied with your father, I am satisfied, and he wrote the satisfaction of Osman bin Syed, and Imam prayed for the forgiveness of Osman bin Syed. Imam then wrote about his loneliness in the absence of Usman bin Said, and here's the part, and after that Imam said, Muhammad bin Usman, from now on you are my second deputy. So after the demise, after the martyrdom of Usman bin Said, his own son Muhammad bin Usman was appointed as the deputy by Imam Zamana in a letter of condolences that he sent to him. Now, before we head to the second deputy, let's discuss a little bit about the first deputy and his cover, because he did not want to get caught by the Abbasid Caliphate. Usman bin Said traded oil, butter, and olives as a cover for what he was actually doing, for his actual activities, because he had to hide his responsibilities of Imam's deputation to be protected from the harms of the government. Why did he have to hide? Why did he have to have a cover? Why couldn't he openly announce that he was a deputy of Imam Zamana? Because as I said, the government, the Abbasid Caliphate, had a massive hate against our Imam and against his Shias. That is why, in order not to get caught, he moved away from Samara to Baghdad, and when he would do his actual activities, he would cover it up by saying, oh, it's butter, it's oil, and that is why people knew him as the famous oil and olives seller. That's how well his cover was, and he had to have that cover because he wanted to stay safe from the Abbasid Caliphate's evil and harm. Now, let's talk about the second deputy of Imam Zamana. Muhammad bin Usman, who is also, as I said, the son of our first deputy, of Imam Zamana, Usman bin Said. Muhammad bin Usman, the second deputy among the four deputies. During the time of our 11th Imam, he was the assistant of his father, who was the first deputy of Imam. After his father passed away, after Usman bin Said passed away, Muhammad bin Usman received a letter of condolences from our 12th Imam. In that letter, he expressed his sympathies for the death of his father and mentioned that he was appointed to take the responsibilities after his father, and he was officially the second deputy of Imam Zaman. Now, his place of residency was also Baghdad, and he is also buried in Baghdad. Let's talk about the third deputy. Now, this deputy is actually quite famous, and I think me saying the name of his deputies will make a lot of people realize that not only was this person this, he was also the third deputy of Imam Zamana. The name of his third deputy is Hussein bin Ra. Now, I know some of us know Hussein bin Ra as the person that brings our ariza to Imam, but do you know that he was also the third deputy of Imam Zamana? If you did not, let me explain. Hussein bin Ra was the third deputy of Imam Zamana after Muhammad bin Said. He was the third deputy of Imam, and he was a very trusted and close friend of Muhammad bin Usman, who was the second deputy. The third deputy was close friends with the second deputy. Hussein bin Ra was good friends with Muhammad bin Usman. Muhammad bin Usman, with the command of Imam Zamana, introduced him as the successor in the last days of his life. Imam Zamana commanded Muhammad bin Usman, you are the second deputy. You are about to be murdered. But before that happens, appoint your close friend Hussein bin Ra as the third deputy, and he will take your responsibilities after your demise. We need to understand that Hussein bin Ra was actually also the companion of Imam Hassan Askari. After the demise of the second deputy, Hussein bin Ra was appointed as the third and new deputy. When Muhammad bin Usman became ill, Imam ordered him to declare Hussein bin Ra as his third deputy. Imam issued a letter of approval of Hussein bin Ra's deputation. The third deputy, Hussein bin Ra, will pass away in 326 after Hijrah, and his grave is also in Baghdad. His grave is also being visited by many Shias from all across the world. Just a little more information. As you know, and as I said, Hussein bin Ra is famous in every Shia community. Now, you might be wondering why, and that is why each year on the 15th of Shahaban, we all write arizas on the 15th of Shahaban, and when we write our ariza to our Imam, to the Imam of our time, we send it through Hussein bin Ra. We send it through his name. And I know a lot of us knew Hussein bin Ra as just the deputy. And some of us only knew Hussein bin Ra as just the person who will bring our ariza to Imam. But it is important to understand that Hussein bin Ra was the third deputy of Imam Zamana, and he is also the one who brings our ariza to Imam, because when we write our arizas and we send it to Imam, we send it through the name of Hussein bin Ra. And now let's start to talk about the fourth deputy. The fourth deputy. The name of the fourth deputy is Ali bin Muhammad al-Samari. Ali bin Muhammad al-Samari is going to be he was the fourth deputy of Imam Zamana, fourth and last deputy of Imam Zamana. Because after the martyrdom of this fourth deputy, after the martyrdom of Muhammad, after the martyrdom of Ali bin Muhammad al-Samari, the major occultation will begin, which is ongoing till this day. Ali bin Muhammad al-Samari undertook the position after Hussein bin Ra, who was the third deputy. This is very important to study. It is very important to study and to advance our knowledge when it comes about Ali bin Muhammad al-Samari, because as I said, the major occultation begins and started right after the demise of Muhammad al-Samari. His residence was also Baghdad. So we learned that all four deputies were in Baghdad. He is also murdered in Baghdad in 329 after Hijrah. What else happened on 329 after Hijrah? In 329 after Hijrah, 69 years after the minor occultation began, the major occultation started in 329 after Hijrah. He is buried in Baghdad. His correspondence with Imam Hassan Askari indicates that he was also a companion of our 11th Imam. When we read Shia books, we are able to confirm that yes, he also, even the fourth deputy, Muhammad al-Samari, was the companion of our 11th Imam before he became the fourth and last deputy of Imam Zamana. His deputyship was actually very short. He was a deputy of Imam Zamana for very short, only 3 years. He became a deputy in 327 after Hijrah, and he ended his deputation in 329 after Hijrah, only 3 years. According to historians, and if we go deep in history, Hussein bin Ra appointed him as the successor with the command of Imam Mahdi alayhi salam. As I said, Muhammad al-Samari was a deputy for a very short time, only 3 years. 1 week before the martyrdom of Muhammad al-Samari, he received a letter from Imam telling him about his martyrdom. Imam wrote in the letter, "Oh Muhammad al-Samari, in about 1 week it will be your martyrdom. But Muhammad al-Samari, you will not appoint anybody, because after the demise of Muhammad al-Samari, the major occultation begins, and the major occultation is still ongoing till this present day." Now before I end this lecture, I find it very important we talk about Ali bin Muhammad al-Samari, because in one of my lectures, I have already mentioned him. Ali bin Muhammad al-Samari was the teacher of Sheikh Yaqub Kulani. Who is Sheikh Yaqub Kulani? But before we talk about Sheikh Yaqub Kulani, let's talk about his connections. The four major ahadith book, everybody knows, and I have said it in my past lectures. In fact, I had a lecture about the four major ahadith books. Well, one of the four major ahadith books was written by Sheikh Yaqub Kulani, and the name of this book that Sheikh Yaqub Kulani compiled is Usul Kafi, and inside this book you find 16,000 ahadith, and the book was compiled by Sheikh Yaqub Kulani. And if you remember, when I did my lecture about the four major ahadith books, we talked about Sheikh Yaqub Kulani, and I gave you a very massive introduction about Sheikh Yaqub Kulani. So, as I was saying, Ali bin Muhammad al-Samari was the teacher of Sheikh Yaqub Kulani. Sheikh Yaqub Kulani was the student of Muhammad al-Samari, who was the 4th deputy, and Sheikh Yaqub Kulani would go and write our first major book out of the 4 major ahadith books, and in this book we find 16,000 ahadith, 16000 ahadith, which is an enormous number of ahadith. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. I hope that all my Azadar and everybody listening to this lecture understands Ghibat Kubra, Ghibat Sughra. I hope everybody understood the minor occultation, Ghibat Sughra, and everybody understood the major occultation, which is still ongoing till this present day, Ghibat Kubra, including the 4 important deputies of Imam Zamana, their responsibilities, such as Hussein bin Raw's responsibilities till this day when we send our ariza through his name. And we talked about all 4 deputies when they started their job and when they ended it, their covers. And I hope all Azadar today, they learned more about these 4 deputies, and it is actually highly recommended to advance our knowledge when it comes about the deputy of our Imam, and not only about the deputy of our Imam. It is in fact important to know about the present Imam, Imam Zamana alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. We need to understand and know the Imam of our time, know about Ghibat Kubra, because we need to understand this to increase our knowledge and marifat, because marifat Imam is wajib for all Shias, because marifat Imam is in fact wajib for all Shias. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad.